There is a darkness inside you that you have spent your whole life trying to outrun. You hide it behind achievements, behind kindness, behind control. You call it discipline, humility, morality, but deep down, it's fear. Fear of what you might become if you ever stop pretending to be only light. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of the psyche that contains everything we reject about ourselves, the impulses we bury, the rage we disguise, the envy we deny, the desires we shame. The shadow is not evil. It is simply unlived potential energy that has been exiled because it did not fit the image you were taught to present to the world. And here lies the paradox. What you repress does not disappear. It waits. It grows stronger in the dark, feeding on your denial, shaping your fears, leaking into your choices in ways you cannot see. The shadow hides not in strangers, but in the quiet moments when you betray yourself, in the anger you can't explain, in the jealousy that burns without reason, in the patterns that repeat, no matter how much you swear you've changed. You think you are running from your demons, but you are running from your own power. Because what you call darkness is simply your disowned strength, the courage you were told was aggression, the desire you were taught was sin, the ambition you were warned was arrogance. The world convinced you to mutilate your wholeness in exchange for acceptance. And now you live as a fragment, praised for your light, but haunted by what you buried to maintain it. But the truth cannot be destroyed. It can only be denied, and the denied self always returns not as truth, but as chaos. That is why your emotions feel like explosions you cannot control. That is why your relationships mirror your deepest wounds. That is why the same cycles repeat in new disguises. You are not cursed. You are unconscious. You are not broken. You are divided. The shadow does not seek to harm you. It seeks to be integrated. It wants to come home. To embrace the dark is not to become wicked. It is to become whole. You were not born to be half a soul. Every saint has a sinner inside them, and every sinner carries a saint. Light without shadow is an illusion. You cannot claim to be pure when you have simply refused to see the full spectrum of your humanity. The modern world worships positivity, endless smiles, curated perfection, spiritual bypassing, disguised as peace. But peace is not denial. Peace is integration. Real light does not hide from darkness. It shines through it. The shadow is your initiation, your descent into the underworld of your own psyche. Like Dante walking through hell, like Christ descending before resurrection, like Jung retreating into his own madness, every soul that seeks truth must pass through the gates of its own abyss. Because enlightenment is not a climb upward, it is a descent inward. You must look into the mirror of your fears until you recognize yourself staring back. The rage you suppress, that is your fire. The lust you fear, that is your life force. The envy you deny, that is your untapped ambition. The grief you avoid, that is your depth. You cannot kill these parts without killing yourself. You cannot ascend to heaven by rejecting hell. You transcend it by walking through it. Nietzsche understood this when he wrote, "Be careful, lest in fighting monsters you become one." But the greater warning is this: if you refuse to face your monsters, you already are one, a creature possessed by everything you will not face. Look around you. Modern civilization is the shadow unacknowledged, greed disguised as progress, manipulation disguised as leadership, vanity disguised as virtue. Humanity's collective darkness has gone unchecked because individuals refuse to face their own, and so the world becomes an unconscious reflection of the self, chaotic, hungry, divided. You cannot change the world until you change yourself. You cannot change yourself until you confront your shadow. This is not easy work. It is brutal. It requires you to dismantle the mask you spent your whole life building. The good person image, the strong one, the nice one. You will lose the comfort of pretending. You will face the discomfort of seeing what you truly are: capable of cruelty, capable of deceit, capable of apathy, but also capable of immense compassion, unbreakable power, divine creativity. The shadow hides your demons, yes, but also your divinity. When Jung spoke of the shadow, he was not condemning darkness, he was revealing the blueprint for wholeness. The goal is not to banish your inner darkness, but to bring it into consciousness, to hold it with awareness until it transforms from monster to messenger. Because every dark impulse carries information. Anger tells you where your boundaries were crossed. Envy shows you what you secretly desire. Guilt reveals where your values are misaligned. Even hatred, that most feared of emotions, is a signal that something sacred within you has been violated. The shadow speaks in the language of emotion. And when you learn to listen, you become sovereign. The world can no longer manipulate you through shame, because you have nothing left to hide. You become dangerous, not to others, but to illusion. Because a person who has integrated their darkness cannot be controlled. They do not seek approval, for they have accepted their own nature. They do not need constant validation, for they no longer live in fear of rejection. They move with quiet confidence, because they have made peace with every version of themselves. This is why Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. To make the darkness conscious is to take responsibility for your own chaos, to stop projecting it onto others, to stop blaming society, parents, partners, the past, to say, it is me, I am the one who lies, I am the one who envies, I am the one who fears. And in that radical honesty, something miraculous happens. The darkness begins to dissolve, because darkness cannot survive being seen. The ego thrives in denial. The soul thrives in awareness. When you stop running, the shadow stops chasing. When you stop hiding, the shadow stops haunting. And when you finally look it in the eyes, you realize it was never a monster, it was a wounded child begging to be seen. You begin to forgive yourself, not the shallow forgiveness that says, it's fine, but the deep forgiveness that says, I understand why I did what I did. And through that understanding, you become whole again. Wholeness does not mean perfection. It means nothing is excluded. It means you can be both kind and fierce, gentle and unyielding, compassionate and commanding. The person who has integrated their shadow becomes unpredictable, not because they are unstable, but because they are free. They can adapt to any situation because they have access to the full range of their humanity. Imagine a warrior who can also love deeply, a lover who can also stand alone, a thinker who can also feel fully. That is the balanced human. That is the self that the shadow work was meant to awaken. The process is not linear. You will descend many times. You will face new layers of darkness as you grow, because the more light you hold, the deeper your roots must go. But with each descent, you rise stronger, more grounded, more authentic. You stop fearing the world, because you have already walked through your own underworld. No insult can wound you. No failure can break you. No rejection can define you, because you have already met your own abyss and made peace with it. That is what it means to embrace the dark to find the light. You realize that light is not the absence of darkness, it is its transformation. The brightest flame is born from the darkest night. The deepest wisdom is born from the hardest suffering. The most unshakable faith is forged in the moments when everything collapses. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is your initiation into wholeness. So the next time you feel lost, broken, angry, or ashamed, do not run. Sit with it. Listen to it. Let it speak. The shadow is not trying to destroy you. It is trying to wake you up. It is trying to show you what you truly are. Not perfect, not pure, but whole. And in that wholeness, you find peace that cannot be disturbed, strength that cannot be shaken, light that cannot be extinguished. You find yourself, because the path to heaven always begins in hell. And only those brave enough to descend into their own darkness ever truly rise into the light. When you begin this descent, it does not feel like awakening, it feels like dying. The ego trembles because its kingdom is crumbling. Every lie you've told yourself begins to rot in the light of awareness. The false confidence, the false humility, the masks you wore to be loved, they start to fall away. And with each layer stripped, you feel naked in a world that no longer knows who you are. You begin to question everything, your beliefs, your desires, your relationships, your purpose. And that questioning is sacred. Doubt is not weakness, it is purification. The mind must be cleansed of false certainty before truth can enter. Jung called this the night sea journey, a voyage into the depths of the unconscious where the rational mind cannot guide you. It is the territory of chaos, dreams, symbols, and instincts, the ancient realm of the soul. Here, you will meet yourself in forms you do not recognize. The jealous you, the cowardly you, the manipulative you, the part of you that wanted power, even at the cost of integrity, the part that pretended to be good, not because it cared about goodness, but because it feared judgment. You will meet all of them, and you will want to look away. Do not. Look deeper, because beneath every distortion lies truth. Beneath every shame lies power. You will discover that what you call evil within yourself was often just unloved strength. The aggression you suppressed could have been your courage. The arrogance you hid could have been your confidence. The selfishness you condemned could have been your self-respect. You do not erase the darkness by denying it. You redeem it by naming it. Every time you say, yes, that too is me, the darkness loses control. Because the shadow feeds on resistance. It feeds on the tension between who you are and who you pretend to be. The greater the gap, the stronger the shadows pull. But when you close that gap, when you refuse to hide, the shadow becomes light. This is why Jung's work was so revolutionary. He understood that our collective sickness, war, corruption, greed, fanaticism, was a reflection of the unintegrated human psyche. Humanity projects its inner monsters onto the world, then tries to destroy them externally. But what we fight out there is always something unresolved in here. You cannot create peace by destroying enemies. You create peace by understanding what within you needed enemies in the first place. The wars we see in the world are the externalized wars of our collective shadow. And you, as an individual, are both participant and key. Because when one person integrates their darkness, the world becomes slightly more whole. Every inner transformation ripples outward into the field of humanity. Do not underestimate your power. When you heal your anger, you lessen the world's aggression. When you forgive yourself, you ease the collective guilt. When you face your fear, you shrink the pool of human cowardice. Each act of consciousness contributes to the evolution of us all. But do not mistake integration for indulgence. Shadow work is not an excuse for chaos. It does not mean you give your darkness permission to dominate. It means you take responsibility for it. To integrate is to master, not to surrender. You do not glorify the dark. You learn its language. You stop letting anger possess you, but you also stop pretending it's wrong to feel it. You learn how to use its energy to protect your boundaries, to pursue justice, to stand up for truth. You stop letting desire control you, but you no longer shame it. You let it become creativity, vitality, devotion. You stop letting fear paralyze you, but you no longer suppress it. You let it become awareness, alertness, humility. This is alchemy, the transmutation of lead into gold. And that gold is your authentic self. The world will call this transformation selfish, because a whole person cannot be controlled. Society thrives on guilt. It depends on people staying afraid of their own power. The integrated soul, however, cannot be manipulated by shame. It obeys no ideology, no hierarchy, no system. It lives by inner law, the law of authenticity. That authenticity is dangerous to the collective illusion. It exposes falseness wherever it goes. It does not bow to authority. It becomes authority. That is why Jung's philosophy was feared by institutions, because a person who embraces their shadow is no longer dependent on external salvation. They no longer need to be good according to someone else's standard. They simply are. And that kind of freedom terrifies the world. You will notice this as you awaken. People will tell you that you've changed, that you've grown colder, detached, intense. They will say you've lost your light, when in truth, you've just stopped performing it. You've stopped dimming it for comfort. Your boundaries will look like arrogance to those who benefited from your self-betrayal. Your silence will feel like rejection to those who fed on your attention. Your power will feel like threat to those who still live in denial of their own. Let them misunderstand. The integrated soul does not seek to be liked. It seeks to be real. And reality is not always beautiful, but it is always liberating. When you reach this place, you will notice something profound. Your compassion deepens. Because once you have met your own darkness, you can no longer judge others for theirs. You see the same wounds, the same fears, the same longing for love hidden behind every mask. You begin to understand that evil is not the opposite of good, it is the result of unconscious pain. That understanding does not make you naive. It makes you wise. Because compassion without boundaries is corruption, but compassion with awareness is power. You stop trying to save everyone. You start living as an example instead. You embody what you once sought to explain. You become the light that doesn't preach, but illuminates. This is what Jung called the self, the union of opposites, the reconciliation of the conscious and unconscious, the human and the divine. It is the birth of true individuality. Most people never reach it because it requires dying to every false identity. It requires stepping beyond moral dualities, not to become amoral, but to understand that the divine contains all things. The shadow and the light are not enemies. They are siblings in the house of eternity. And when you see this, truly see it, something shifts inside you forever. The constant tension between who you are and who you should be dissolves. You no longer chase perfection. You radiate wholeness. You no longer divide yourself into good and bad, worthy and unworthy. You see yourself as nature, wild, balanced, alive. The storm does not apologize to the sky. The ocean does not deny its depth. The fire does not question its heat. And you, at last, stop apologizing for your power. You begin to live in harmony with your instincts. You no longer suppress your emotions. You express them with clarity. You no longer chase meaning. You create it. You no longer fear the unknown. You walk into it with reverence. This is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of conscious life. Because before you faced your shadow, you were a puppet pulled by invisible strings. Now you are the one holding them. You are not perfect, but you are real. You are not pure, but you are whole. And wholeness, my friend, is holiness. That is the hidden truth Jung discovered, that divinity does not live in the heavens, but in the integration of opposites. God is not found in escape from the world, but in the full embrace of it, light and dark, joy and grief, creation and destruction. To reject any part of life is to reject part of yourself. So embrace it all. The laughter and the rage, the peace and the chaos, the longing and the fulfillment. Because they are not contradictions, they are complements. You are not meant to be pure light. You are meant to be the bridge between light and dark, the sacred tension that births awareness. That is the destiny of the conscious human being. You are both the wound and the healer, both the question and the answer, both the abyss and the fire that illuminates it. And when you finally understand that, you stop trying to escape life and you begin to live it. You realize that enlightenment was never about ascending into light, but about bringing light down into the depths. You realize that heaven is not above you, it's within you, in the union of every fragment you once exiled. You realize that God was never missing. You were simply too divided to see. Now, you see. And in that seeing, the dark no longer frightens you, it becomes your ally. Because you have learned that the path to light will always lead through shadow. And only those brave enough to embrace their darkness ever find the radiance of their true self. When you emerge from that descent, there is a stillness that no applause can disturb. You walk through life differently, not above others, but among them, quietly radiant. You do not preach enlightenment. You embody it. You no longer seek validation from the world because you have made peace with both its beauty and its brutality. You have looked at life from its roots, and you understand that darkness is not the opposite of light, it is its soil. You begin to feel something subtle, almost invisible, a calm certainty that no success or failure can alter. You don't crave to be understood. You don't fear being misunderstood. You've seen too deeply into the architecture of human nature to need approval from those still blind to their own shadows. You watch others hide behind the same illusions you once worshipped: positivity as armor, intellect as control, morality as disguise, and you feel no contempt. You feel compassion, because you know how hard it is to face yourself, how terrifying it is to stand naked before the mirror of truth with no story to hide behind. You understand that every lie is a cry for safety, every mask a plea for love. But your compassion no longer makes you weak. It no longer requires you to carry other people's darkness to prove your goodness. You no longer mistake empathy for self-erasure. You help, but you no longer bleed for the unready. You listen, but you no longer drown in other people's storms. You have learned the sacred balance, how to hold light without being consumed by it, how to face darkness without becoming it. That balance is mastery. You realize that shadow work is not something you finish, it is something you live. Every day, the ego will try to rebuild its walls, to create new identities, new illusions. Every day, you will feel the pull to revert, to comfort, to numbness, to denial. But now you know better. You recognize the signs, the lies taste familiar. The old patterns no longer seduce you. Awareness has changed the chemistry of your being. You cannot return to sleep once you've seen the machinery behind your own mind. You cannot unknow the truth that your light and your dark are made of the same essence energy, waiting to be directed. You have learned to speak to your shadow in its own language, the language of honesty. When anger rises, you listen to it instead of suppressing it. When fear surfaces, you ask it what it's trying to protect. When jealousy burns, you trace it back to your unfulfilled potential. Every emotion becomes a messenger, every impulse a doorway. That is real spirituality, not escaping your humanity, but sanctifying it, not bypassing pain, but transmuting it. You begin to see the divine even in your darkest moments, because you now understand the universe hides its wisdom in paradox. Creation and destruction, joy and suffering, light and dark, they are not enemies. They are the eternal dance of evolution. You are part of that dance. And because you are conscious of it, you no longer move blindly. You no longer curse the storms. You use their winds to move forward. You no longer fear the fire. You let it forge your clarity. You no longer resist endings. You understand they are beginnings wearing black. You have learned to surrender not in defeat, but in trust. Surrender is not giving up control. It is aligning with truth. It is saying, I no longer fight the flow of life. I move with it. When you reach this state, something miraculous happens. The world around you begins to respond differently. Opportunities arise not from chasing, but from resonance. People appear not to distract, but to align. Even chaos feels choreographed, because you are no longer projecting unconscious conflict into your reality. You've reclaimed your inner world, and the outer world follows. The alchemists called this the magnum opus, the great work. It was never about turning lead into gold. It was about turning unconsciousness into awareness. The true gold is the self, purified through the fire of truth. You are that gold. You have faced your hells and found heaven buried beneath them. You have met your monsters and discovered they were your teachers. You have walked through the ashes of your illusions and found your wings waiting there. This is not the end of shadow work. It is the beginning of conscious creation. Because once you've made peace with your inner darkness, you no longer create from fear. You no longer build from lack. You no longer love from need. You create from overflow. You build from clarity. You love from abundance. Your relationships change. You no longer demand others fill your voids because you've integrated the parts that once begged for completion. You attract not mirrors of your wounds, but reflections of your wholeness. You stop chasing love because you are love, not the fragile, conditional love of the ego, but the steady, self-sustaining love that radiates from authenticity. And that kind of love is not romantic, it is revolutionary, because it transforms everything it touches. It frees others to be real, because your presence no longer judges. You have nothing to prove, nothing to hide, nothing to protect. You are the rarest thing in the modern world, a human being at peace with their own humanity. That peace terrifies those who live divided, because they cannot understand how you can hold such stillness amidst chaos, such softness amidst fire, such confidence amidst uncertainty. They will call it luck, arrogance, mystery. But you will know it is integration. You have become one, and in becoming one, you embody the very essence of the divine unity through duality. You are the storm and the calm, the light and the flame, the sinner and the saint, the question and the answer. You are no longer chasing transcendence, you are living it. Because transcendence is not escape, it is inclusion. It is the full acceptance of everything you are, everything you were, and everything you are still becoming. You will still fall, you will still falter, you will still feel fear and rage and pain, but they will not rule you. You will meet them with awareness, you will guide them, you will let them speak, and then you will let them pass. That is what mastery looks like, not perfection, but presence. Presence so deep that even darkness becomes light in your hands. That is the secret Jung left behind for those brave enough to understand. The light you seek will never be found by denying the dark. The dark is the crucible where the light is born. So do not fear your shadow, study it, respect it, integrate it, because the one who has mastered their shadow has mastered the world. They are unshaken by criticism, untempted by ego, unmoved by fear. They no longer seek to be seen, for they see themselves clearly. They no longer need to be loved, for they love all parts of themselves. And that kind of human being, whole, aware, untamed, is unstoppable. They walk through life like a silent flame, not burning to destroy, but to illuminate. Not seeking followers, but awakening others by example. That is what it means to embrace the dark, to find the light, to become not a symbol of purity, but a testament to truth. To live as the bridge between heaven and hell, radiant, grounded, whole. And when you finally live that way, you will understand the deepest truth of all. The darkness was never your enemy. It was your invitation, your initiation, your path home. Because the light you were seeking was never above you. It was buried within you, waiting for the courage to be seen. Now you have seen it. Now you have become it. And from this moment on, you will never fear the dark again, because you are the light that illuminates it. And now, the light no longer blinds you. It bends to you. It moves with you. You carry it, not as a halo, but as a pulse beneath your skin, steady, quiet, eternal. You walk through the world knowing that nothing outside you can ever complete or destroy you. You have found the axis of your being, the still point that does not tremble even when the entire world shakes. You no longer ask, who am I? You know. You are both shadow and flame, earth and sky, destruction and creation, endlessly intertwined. The self that once feared the dark is gone. The one who denied, who chased, who begged for meaning, gone. In their place stands something ancient and unbreakable: awareness. Awareness that does not need to be right, to be loved, to be seen. Awareness that simply is. That is what all your suffering was trying to give you: this stillness, this clarity, this quiet dominion over your own mind. You were never meant to destroy your darkness, you were meant to claim it. You were never meant to escape the labyrinth. You were meant to light it from within. And now you understand the monsters you feared were just the guardians of your own power. The demons you ran from were doorways. The darkness was not punishment, it was initiation. It was your own soul calling you home. You have returned. You have reclaimed the pieces that you once exiled. You have seen your rage and found its purpose. You have touched your grief and discovered its wisdom. You have faced your envy and uncovered its hunger for creation. Every shadow has revealed itself as a teacher, every fear as a guide. You are whole again. Wholeness is not perfection. It is inclusion. It is the willingness to hold contradiction without being torn apart by it. You can be kind and relentless, humble and powerful, gentle and unyielding. You can burn and still be holy. You can fall and still be divine. The gods do not live in the sky, they live in those who have survived their own underworlds and emerged bearing light. You are that light. You no longer search for heaven because you've discovered it's a state of consciousness, not a place. Heaven is what happens when you stop rejecting any part of yourself. Hell is what happens when you do. And so, you rise not in arrogance, not in escape, but in embodiment. You rise not to prove, but to live. You rise as the synthesis of all you've ever been, carrying both your wounds and your wisdom with equal grace. Your presence changes rooms, not because you demand attention, but because your energy is whole. People feel it, the grounded calm of someone who has nothing left to hide, the strength of someone who has met every part of themselves and made peace with it. You are not afraid of darkness anymore because you have become its keeper. You do not fear suffering because you know it cannot break you, it can only refine you. You do not fear loss because you know that what is real can never be taken. You live now as the alchemist, turning pain into power, fear into focus, chaos into clarity. This is what true freedom feels like. Not the freedom from shadow, but the freedom to walk with it unashamed, unafraid, unbroken. And when others ask how you did it, how you became so unbothered, so certain, so alive, you will not speak in riddles or preach in doctrines. You will simply say, I stopped running from myself. Because that's all enlightenment ever was, self-acceptance at its highest octave. And now, you no longer chase the light. You are the light. You no longer reject the dark. You own it. You no longer seek meaning. You embody it. The eternal dance between your darkness and your light has become one movement, effortless, balanced, whole. And in that balance, you find God not as something outside of you, but as the quiet awareness that has always watched from within. You finally understand that there was never anything to fix, never anything to prove, never anything to escape. You were the shadow and the light all along. You were the storm and the sky, the fire and the dawn. You are not the seeker anymore. You are what was being sought. And as you walk forward now, you do so with the peace of one who has returned home, not to perfection, not to innocence, but to truth. The light you found was never meant to blind the dark. It was meant to guide it home. And now that the dark has come home, you are whole. Not an angel, not a sinner, not light, not dark. Something greater, something that transcends both. You are consciousness made flesh. You are the union of heaven and earth. You are what the world becomes when it remembers itself. And from this moment on, no matter where you walk, you will carry that truth within you. You do not need to search for the light anymore because you are the one who brings it.